Welcome to Sober.Coffee, a weekly coffee chat sharing experience, strength, and hope for anyone on the sober road to recovery. You can download Sober.Coffee weekly on all podcast platforms and check us out on Instagram at Sober.Coffee Podcast and on Twitter at Sober.Coffee Pod. To learn more about us and to help support these sessions, visit online at Sober.Coffee. Here are your hosts, two guys on their own path of recovery, Mike and Glenn. Let's join them at the coffee shop.
Hey there, Glenn.
Hey, morning, Mikey.
What up, my friend?
Not much, man. Let's get another cup of coffee. How do we always get the same table? This is awesome.
I know.
But sometimes it's good to change up tables. You know, sometimes it's good to move one seat to the right.
Don't like change, Glenn.
I know. Yeah, but we're better at change today than we were.
Oh, my goodness.
Right?
So much better at change.
Some people actually embrace it today.
Yeah.
They don't curse it.
And remember, nothing changes if nothing changes.
Oh, I love that one. In fact, frankly, just to give you some stats.
Sure.
That's our most popular episode.
Really?
That has the most listener downloads.
Okay. So check it out if you haven't yet.
Yep. If nothing changes, nothing changes. I don't know the episode number, but it's in there in the menu.
That's right. All right. What do we got today?
All right. So here's what we got. So we have been getting questions from listeners.
Right.
And we're handling them a couple different ways. First of all, we love the engagement. Podcast at Sober.Coffee. And we've gotten some great questions. We are handling them in a couple different ways. Number one, some of them are personal. We'll handle them directly. We just kind of jump in directly, and we really appreciate the opportunity for that. Secondly, some of these, they're shorter, right? So we do a rapid fire.
Okay.
Right? We're doing a rapid fire. We handle 3 or 4 questions during one episode. And some are a little protracted. So we're, such as this one, right? We have a listener question, and we're just going to tear it apart and chat through it.
Let's give it a go. Hey, Can I handle one personally, though, before we jump in?
Yeah.
Okay, this is a shout-out to
No, you don't have time to go to the restroom.
This is a shout-out to my mom, who emailed us and said, do I get a mug for being one of your listeners?
There you go.
Yeah,
go mom.
Mom, I'll work on it.
Go mom. I think she represents 90% of our listenership, right? That's awesome.
When we're down on downloads, we can always count on her.
I know. Come on, mom.
All right.
So here's the question for today. Why do I need to wait a year to do X?
Okay.
Right. So some of those things are, hey, why do I need, early in sobriety, people, and I've heard it around the rooms. I've been told, hey, wait a year, when you're early in sobriety, wait a year to start a relationship. Wait a year to change jobs, start a new job. Wait a year to move. Wait a year to XYZ. Fill in the blank, right? Major decision, right? So why is that said, or and why is that a good idea, or is it a good idea?
Right. Well, I'm no professional. By the way,
how do pulling the disclosures out again?
Yeah, here we go. How do I get initials after my name? I mean, I'm not smart enough to get DDS or DR but how do I get initials out?
I'm giving you initials. FPO, for professionals only.
For professionals only. Yeah. So that's a great question and it is a question that professionals discuss a lot. I've been online before asking the same question, and there's a million answers out there. And the professionals, yes, many of them suggest that you wait a year before you do that. And again, they understand a lot more about what's going on and how long it takes people to process and how long it takes to create habits and all this other stuff, right? So they get all that. I'm just looking at life from life standpoint, and what jumps out at me is that it's a tough question. It's a tough question, but I think I have an answer. I think I have an answer for myself, and that is that I could do anything in the first year of my sobriety, or early in my sobriety, as long as my sobriety is my number one priority, not a priority, the priority. That's the key thing for me.
All right, so I love how you look at that, and that just really kind of clicked and made sense for me. I'm working with a guy, and this is kind of how I frame it. I'm working with a guy, love him, absolutely love him, but he's working his own plan, right? And it reminds me of a story in the Big Book where the guy comes out of the tornado shelter, and says, "Look, Ma, the wind stopped blowing," right? And he's it just reminded me so many times of when I would come out of a disastrous relapse, and I would jump right back into work, and I would jump right back into everything I was doing, and I would up my game. In fact, my best productivity is when I came out of my disastrous relapses because I tripled down on everything, right? But it wasn't sustainable, right? So I'm working with a guy and, comes out of a disastrous relapse, detox, strapped down in the hospital, for detox, right? Comes out. And within a week, he tells me, I'm starting a new job. I'm going to buy a house, where my kids can come live with me. I'm starting a side business, a side hustle. I've got my girlfriend. I want her to move from Florida to here to, start to get engaged.
Wow.
Right? And I'm going to work on blending our families a week after it's disastrous, right?
Wow.
So, as we started this episode, I mean, there are kind of some major decisions.
Yeah, absolutely.
All of them independently.
And he's doing all five of them.
Because, look, Ma, the wind stopped blowing. Right. So the way I picture that, and as I outlined it for him, I think he's trying to build tall without building wide and deep.
Okay.
So that immediately takes me to a building in Chicago, right? They built one of these big towers. The first thing they do for a year is work on the foundation. They dig deep. They put all the pilings, all those deep pilings deep in the ground. Tons of concrete, right? They give it the right time to sit and cure and get solid, right? And only when you have that do they start to build up. Right. And if you didn't do that, then the building would come down. Right. And so I was trying to explain to this dude, I'm like, I said, I really think sobriety
is that foundation.
Is the foundation. And for me, early first 2 years, in fact 3 years, in fact even now over 6 years, I'm just starting to build higher because I know I have a very good base, of sobriety. But I knew for several years that I was underperforming. I knew I wasn't building up. I knew I had the talent to build up. I knew I had opportunities to build up, but I purposely did not because I wanted to make sure, because I had seen the building collapse in my own life so many times. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to sit here and I'm going to learn. I'm going to go to these meetings. I'm going to dive in the deep end of the pool. I'm going to learn, and I'm going to get this stuff where it's deep and wide. So now I have a chance of building high.
I love that.
Does that make sense?
Oh, it totally does. And, here in the Big Book, they say, to be careful, to be careful of what is out there. And they use the words cunning, baffling, and powerful, right? And so
I love those words, by the way. I don't know who came up with those.
I know, right? But the way I see it is if you're distracted, it's almost like going into a fight and you got this, you put your armor on, right? You put your belt and your chest plate. I'm going back a couple of years. Yeah. We don't fight like this anymore, but at least not that I'm aware of. So you get this armor on, but if you're in, and then the arrows come and it ricochets off your armor. Why? Because you're ready. You're focused on it. You're prepared for it. If you don't have your armor on and you're going through life, I mean, you're going to take an arrow.
So if I could modernize that,
yeah, please,
because I love that. What I call that is sober maturity, right? And sober maturity is having a length of time and a period of sobriety and really working the steps, right, and making progress. And what I realized about that is when I have that level of sober maturity, I can take shots from the world, from others. I can take failures. I can take falling down. I can take missteps, mistakes, and they glance off me. Whereas before, early in sobriety, without the sober maturity, I was still sensitive. it was all about me. That took a period of time. And I took one of those shots, man, I would relapse.
Right.
Because I couldn't handle it.
But life comes at you, right? And opportunity comes at you. And you're right. The wind stops blowing, right? And you've got this kind of new bounce in your step, and you want to take it out for a walk, you know? But the thing is that if you don't continue to work on the sobriety, then how do I put it? I had a mantra in my sobriety, and I started it when I was in rehab, and it was 4 words: get healthy, period. Stay healthy, period. And so I run everything through a filter now in my life of, is this part of getting healthy or staying healthy? That's my number one. Everything builds off of that. It goes back to your foundation, Glenn.
I think a key for me is working with the sponsor. So I can remember early on making all my decisions. I would bounce them off my sponsor, and he was so patient with me. But he really helped me filter through a decisioning tree, of how I look at things, right? Because I'm grandiose, I want, big, better, whatever, and he really helped me with that. But one example is, in September of 2014, I went into my 4-month program. So I'm 60 days into my 4-month program. I'm bored out of my mind. I look at these same, 8 dudes that are in the same program, and they were super attracted to me for 2 weeks, and I'm like really enthused. After 8 weeks, same meetings, same guys every day. So I went to my temporary sponsor at the time, and I said, "Hey, John, here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking about going on Match.com, and I'd just like to go out, and it's the holidays coming up. I just like to go see the Christmas tree with a nice girl, and just do that." I said, "Do you think I can handle that?" And instead of waiting a year before a new decision, I'm 2 months into it, right? So the guy says, "Well, let's talk through it." And he says, "Well, what happens, if the girl says no?" I'm like, "Well, then, hey, I'll just go to the next one." And he says, "What's your profile going to look like? Is it going to say a non-drinker?" And I'd always struggled with that before, and I always land up relapsing because I would pretend, So I said, "No, it's going to say non-drinker." I said, "I will not drink. I'll have boundaries." Okay. He goes, "Okay, I think you can do it. Try it." He said, "Let's talk before and after every date." Right. So I land up meeting this girl, Jen, and so this is like November. So it's a couple, 3 months sober. So, I talked to him before. I said, "Hey, here's what she's about. Here's what we're going to do. Here's where we're going to go." And I said, "Here's where we're going to stop," because I had to stop the date at 9:00 because I had to go back for check-in for my program. So and I said, I'll call you after the date. And he said, okay. So it was all structure. I was working with somebody, giving me guidance, helping me read the label on my jar. And it worked. I mean, I married her. Not that night.
Wait, is that the end of the story? You married her?
I married her.
All right.
So it does work, but I just want folks to know kind of, what was behind that, because my way of doing it was going to Match.com and putting social drinker, because I didn't want anybody to judge me, and I didn't really figure that all out yet, and I would have been right back in the soup. So what was successful there is working with somebody else, working with my sponsor, getting guidance, having guardrails, having a plan, and hey, did it work out? Yes, it did.
Yeah, it could have went either way. The point of the matter is that you went through it. You put a process behind your plan.
Yes, absolutely. I planned a plan. So
plan.
So hey, I think there's I think that's a general rule of thumb. Mm-hmm. I think there's exceptions to that, but I think one of the keys is you like you started off. Priority is sobriety.
Must.
I mean, that's got to be number one, and then. You're working with somebody will help you identify your motives,
right.
Help you build a plan, and they can help you read a label on your jar, especially early in sobriety, that I had no idea what that meant, or, all I knew is my decision-making process was crap.
Right. The thing that's been helpful to me in the past couple of years is, again, this show should be sponsored by Google because I use all their products, but I've got the, I use Google for my task list. And what happens is when I come into a month, a week, a day, I number what my priorities are, right? Mm-hmm. And so as I'm going through a massive list of 20, 30 things, I find that I end up with certain number, by default, number one. These are really important or urgent things that need to get done, right? I guess here's my psyche change. My psyche change is that there can only be one number one. There can be multiple number twos that are important for me to accomplish, but none of them are more important than the work on my sobriety. Because if I don't have that, I get none of the benefits of the other things. Because before, when drinking was my number one priority, I got the net result of drinking being number one priority, and that was misery and chaos, and the list could go on and on. Mm-hmm. So as long as that filter, as long as it goes through the get healthy, stay healthy, is what is my goal today, to get healthy and stay healthy. That's my number one goal. Then I think for me, I can entertain new and challenging opportunities, you know.
That's awesome. So again, work with somebody else.
Right. See, and
make
a professional maybe
a priority. And I'm telling you, there is significant value in building that foundation wide and deep before you start building up. And, again, I point to sober maturity. You know, there's a lot of things without guidance, without a plan, I couldn't handle. And if I couldn't handle it, I knew booze was a solution.
Yep.
You know, so
not today.
Very good question. Thank you for the
stuff.
questions.
Keep them coming.
Podcast at Sober.Coffee. You know, again, great. Mikey, love having coffee with you, man.
Good stuff, Glenn.
Have a great
Thanks.
day, brother.
All right, man.
Thanks for joining us for today's coffee chat. To contact the show, email us at podcast@sober.coffee. If you need immediate help, the AA hotline is 800-839-1686. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 800-273-8255. Remember, Mike and Glenn are sharing their own journey on the path to recovery. Any suggestions, medical or otherwise, are their own experiences and should not be viewed as professional advice. See you next week, and remember, there is a solution.
Stay safe in the city of Chicago.